another Lowell Celebrates Kerouac Festival, 36th annual. We started yesterday. We've had events going since yesterday, and tonight we have a very fantastic event for you. Two events actually. We have the Youth Poetry, and then at 8 p.m. we're going to have music from Tucson to Liberate, which will be fantastic as well. But without any further ado, I'm very happy to present to you a young woman who recently joined the Lowell Celebrates Kerouac Committee, and she's responsible for producing the Youth Poetry event, which has a fantastic title, and I'm not going to give away where that comes from, so I'm going to leave it to her. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to present to you Miss Amy Roeder.
Thanks, Mike, and thank everybody for coming out to hear some poetry and talking about Jack Kerouac. I joined the LCK committee this year, and this is my first event for the festival. It also represents sort of coming of age, coming full circle moment for me, because the first time I ever came to Lowell was in the 90s when I took the train out to come here at Ginsberg to speak at LCK. So when I moved to Lowell 9 years ago, I wanted to dive deeper into Kerouac and his work. I knew the guy from On the Road, but I discovered so many other sides to him. The Dream Journaler and the Cat Daddy were surprises, and the French-Canadian Llewellyn was a revelation. And when I read Big Sur during the height of COVID lockdown, I saw that he still had more to teach me. I joined LCK to help facilitate conversations about what it means to read Kerouac in 2024, whether it's for the first time or for the 50th time, and I'm looking forward to hearing our panelists tonight. I'm sorry to announce that one of our scheduled poets, Tanya Gray, had to cancel. She lives in Florida, and her family was impacted by Hurricane Milton, although thankfully not physically harmed. We're going to read a few of her poems tonight so that her voice can still be part of this event. And thankfully, we have Cayleigh Baillargeon, who is a local poet, and she's going to join in the reading. So to get things started, I'm going to read one of Tanya Gray's poems. I was at the poetry workshop earlier this afternoon with Dan Bacon, and he taught us that while imagery in poetry is wonderful, it's important to have strong verbs. So when I was trying to pick something from Tanya's really lovely book called Andal, I went with the strong verbs. This is called Lot's Wife Leaves Suburbia. If you want peace, prepare for war. Today I slammed the door so hard the house fell behind me. If any ring remains of rubble in consequence, my salt heart agape, and oh, to construct the shape of the whole just before. This was my war. I did not shrink to fit, remarks landing around me, in me, fire almost out. When fury came, the seam rip of thunder, a rush of mothers howled through my mouth, burst wide. The motley swarm blackened the room, hurling tables, smashing plates, launching the oven and washer through the window. The wife life I lived laid waste, and the shock of it rang. The door was the end as in the day of Lot, and the host and hellfire, except I refused to look back and kept walking. So now I'm going to introduce our moderator for the evening, Maggie Dietz. Maggie's third book of poems, If You Would Let Me, is forthcoming from 4-way books in 2026. She's also the author of That Kind of Happy and Perennial Fall, both from the University of Chicago Press. Her recent awards include a 2023 Pushcart Prize and a fellowship from Gentle Arts in Wyoming. Maggie was the founding director of Favorite Poem Project, created by former U.S. Poet Laureate Robert Pinsky, and she is co-editor of 3 anthologies related to the project. She is also an associate professor of English at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. So now I'd like to invite Maggie up to the stage and the poets as well, and Maggie will introduce them. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for coming out. I'm going to read one more poem by Tanya Gray. And I thought that this poem was appropriate to read because it's about Hurricane Andrew. Tanya lives in Florida and has for a while. And it seems to relate to Kerouac. The title is The Path of Non-Attachment. And non-attachment is the Buddhist concept of relinquishing control. The path of non-attachment. And the epigraph is, I was born in a crossfire hurricane, the Rolling Stones. At 4:54 a.m., Andrew totaled my car, leveled the house, and destroyed nearly every piece of furniture. The day before, I could see the spiral coming on the news. Everyone said, ride it out, batten down, buy water and canned food, but the shelves were bare. I bought wine and crackers and black cherry seltzer. I glazed, predictions tightening, my head swimming room to room. I didn't tape or board the windows or light Lucky Maria candles. I couldn't think to pray. I packed my mother's Amelia Earhart suitcase with photos and journals I couldn't replace and left Homestead, unclear what must be kept or let go, the way we marry and give ourselves away. If only each disaster announced itself, a siren warning of the storm we won't survive. Whose life can be replaced like new, more to have, to hold, but years? I stumble on the surest things I know. And standing at an airport carousel in another city, I watch an unclaimed bag pass again that someone, somewhere, feels better lost than found. So I'm going to read a poem by Jack Kerouac, too. As Amy mentioned, I directed a project called the Favorite Poem Project, and so in the spirit of that, I'll read a poem by Kerouac that I like. This is from Book of Blues, and after that, I will introduce our readers, with whom I'll be delighted to be in conversation after their reading. So I think this has its cruder moments, but they're veiled. I'd say it's PG-13, but what I love about it is there's just an association of sound. It kind of bounces from one sound to the next, and it's dedicated to Allen Ginsberg, and it's a Ginsberg collage. So since we're celebrating Kerouac, I thought I'd read a poem of his that celebrates someone. This is a 213th chorus. Poem dedicated to Allen Ginsberg, Pratt, Rot, Rort, Mort, Port, Lort, Snort, Pell-mell, Rhine wine, Roll Royce, Ring Ming, mock my lot, roll my doll, pull my hairline, smell my hell, wail my siren, pile my aim, loose my shoe tongue, sing my aim. Loll my wild maul, roll my luck, lay my cashier, gone muck, suck my lamp pole, raise the vein, hang the traitor inside my brain. Fill my pail well, ding my bell, smile for the ladies, come from hell. Yeah, like, hey Jack, thanks for coming. Okay, so my student at UMASS, Lowell, Cayleigh, gosh, we can't get it right. Cayleigh Baillargeon, I do know her, offered to pinch hit when Tanya couldn't come, and we're delighted to have her. Cayleigh will read first. I'm going to introduce all of the readers now, and then they'll get up and each of them read. Cayleigh Baillargeon is a writer, poet, and abolitionist from Lowell, Massachusetts. Her work often centers around her road trips across the United States with her dog and her activism. She's majoring in creative writing and history at the University of Massachusetts Lowell, and is the managing editor of UMASS Lowell's literary magazine, The Offering. She's working on a collection of nonfiction essays that grapple with coming of age in Lowell during the opiate epidemic. Her work has been published in the Guagua Poet Anthology, The Offering, the Dead River Review, Sigma Tau Delta Rectangle, and elsewhere. Ariella Ruth is the author of the chapbook Remnants and was a finalist for the 2017 Two Sylvia's Press Chapbook Prize. She has a poem engraved on a sandstone monolith in downtown Boulder, Colorado, as part of the West Pearl Poetry Project. She holds an MFA in Writing and Poetics from Naropa University's Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics and works at the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. Linda Bratcher Wlodyka is the Massachusetts Beat Poet Laureate 2023 to 2025. Last summer, she was chosen as a contributor to Word by Word, a poetry festival in the Berkshires. Her poem, Secret Cottage, was voted Best in Berkshires in 2012. If Brambles Were Bookends Collected Poems, her first full-length poetry collection was published by Human Error Publishing in 2023. She has 3 self-published chapbooks, and her poems appear in myriad journals and anthologies. She is a member of the Florence Poets Society. Please help me welcome Cayleigh first. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This first poem is called Petunias. As the sun sets over the State House, throngs of people in masks are kettled towards the Common Center. Posters held in earlier hours now line the lengths of pathways because we need our hands to carry water, to record, to defend, to serve, to protect each other. Once the sun sets, you learn the reason for their military gear is to protect them from the military weapons they turn on you, an acknowledgement that their guns can't control which way the wind blows. The tear gas is thick and your nose is running, but you have water, washcloths, oven mitts, and your wits about you. Pushing past the police who touch shoulders like Red Rover, you can't help but realize they underestimate how many games you've won, how many bullies you've bashed in the past just for kids, that you have the day off from work tomorrow, and plenty of time to be detained. You make it to the Freedom Trail and remember Christmas addicts as a canister of chemicals hits a planter box right next to you, then falls at your feet, tangled in petunias. You take a knee, scoop it up with your mitt, and aim for the first flare you see. So this one's a little nicer one. It's about my dog and how he feels about dinner time changing. Dinner time. Walter won't stop screaming about daylight savings time. Arguments about the railroad industry and commerce don't hold up well against a dog who can't read a clock, but has smelled the spillages seeping into Ohio soil. Walter knows he was fed at this time yesterday and the day before that. He is tired of being gaslit. Walter knows it doesn't have to be like this. He's been in Arizona enough times to have been called queer by a cowboy in Tombstone, to piss on a cigar at a state park, and shit on petrified wood. This is a dog culture. He's been out there in November. He knows Arizona ignores clock changes like they ignore the needs of the reservations. Choices are being made for him, but he knows it doesn't have to be this way. It's best to feed Walter before he starts screaming, but he doesn't have opposable thumbs or an income, so I push dinner time back a little every day, till he gets used to the new time and the screaming stops. The hungry never stay hungry for long. They find a way to die, they find a way to eat or a place to die. All right, Since my mom's here, I thought I'd read a love poem. My love is a trash can. My love is a trash can crashing through a window at City Hall, any City Hall, every City Hall. My love is the baker's mitt covering your hand, giving you the courage to guide the tear gas canisters to their owners. My love is improvising weapons, chanting on the front line, and taking a bite to the face. My love is the wick of a Molotov. It sets the cop car on fire and gives the kids popping millies a rhythm to ride to. My love was never the hanger that aborted the American dream, nor the doctor that tried to revive it. My love was discerning enough to recognize that sometimes death is dignity. And although at times my love stretches me thin as the premise of justice on stolen land, it always has enough snap for me to toss these hands, here, there, and everywhere. Alright, my friends, this is the last one. It's about hanging out with my toddler nephew. In the backseat of Benny. That's here because the Hudson River made the Hudson Valley a natural fortress for the Continental Army. I tell Benny as we exit the brewery and hop all the potholes that sit across the street from President Washington's headquarters. But he's more interested in the monster truck. I bet I can beat you to the car, I tell him. I'm gonna kick your butt, Auntie, he says in that little voice. So I let go of his hand and I let him in. The way back to New Haven from Newburgh is 84, and winding back roads through depressed, once thriving river towns and streets named for Eli Whitney. I have to stop myself from telling him about how Whitney ruined everything, and why I want to burn the museum down, and why it'd be important for him to watch. But he's only 3, and he doesn't have the hand-eye coordination required to play with fire. I want to tell him something age-appropriate, but now we're driving through Sandy Hook, and I've had enough history for today. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks Amy and Mike and everybody. My name is Ariella Ruth, and I'm going to read from a few different things. I'm going to start with, for my chapbook, it's called Remnants. I think there's some for sale in the back, if you're so inclined. And Remnants is based on the American folk song Barbara Allen, if anyone's familiar with Barbara Allen, or Barbara Allen. Remnants. Barbara Allen. I want my child to have memories. Screen door falling from its alignment. Wood stove holds on claw footing. Pear tree fades and brightens from nearby hovering, and she can't remember how and where the hands were placed. She is light, the first word, raven hair running on wooden planks. Her foot's arch remains soft, delicate, poet in the womb, the snow that weighs the ceiling. Yard of blue moving sea and green buds swelling to vines. It is hard to leave in such good light. Through a shining lens, flitter of light flecks, a crowd of hands reaches underneath for her. Moments to empty out, not a cry from her 2 blue saucers. Eyes stream of ocean as the storm passes. Waves recede below her shoulders. Slowly, pull the curtain back. Slowly, slowly, pure homogenized air. Water awake, held tight in back of a throat. Discouraged rock, a long line of seaweed, unblinking salt. Her heel dug in and turned around full circle in sand. Nothing can be willed to wash away. Bleed for the moons that have passed. She reaches for tiny outstretched limbs, treading water. hold swan song for years pacing seaside. There's birth and death and birth again. Feet grace stray pebbles and knock at her window. It was evening, the place where she was gone, when he arrived toward the stairs. Huddled warm in a room, head aligned with the flower bed. 2 arms, body, a circle, can fit nicely when crossed over the middle. The rose grew round. Look up to the front porch, staring north. Swerve orange like the light through the first word. Apples, sweet candle. The evening was centuries ago, years of sitting by a wood fire full against the back wall, table hands and eyes on the pink center rose. Aside his wildflowers at twilight, she felt her height, feet buried in toes and heels, double the socks, mend, wool red at the toes. There is always light in his attic room, slanted aside the creek bed. There is no rushing center nerves, only warmth and blue rubber soles. His voice, tunnel pour, a river, folds letters in the rain. It's raining. After years of holding, she finds her body enjoyable. It is a good thing. The finger is ambiguous, a jaw cracks, set tightly between interstice and the trapdoor. Hand the delicate organ. Bells chime from the downtown church steeple. Honey melts in her comb. The more I don't write her, the more she burns. I sort of decided last minute to read from a pretty old work for me. It's called Collarbone, and it's a chapbook that I wrote during my time when I was a student at the Jack Kerouac School in Boulder, Colorado. And the reason I thought I should read it was I've been reading a lot of Kerouac, obviously preparing for today, and we can talk about this more later, but I was, thinking a lot about his use of the dash and Emily Dickinson's use of, the dash, and was reminded of this work that I don't use periods, I only use the dash, much like Kerouac did in some of his poems. And it's the only thing I've ever written very quickly over the course of a couple of days. So again, I was like, oh, this all sort of aligns with, I think, why we're here. So this is called Collarbone, for the good one. The most terrible ghosts are the walking and breathing. I'm sure he'll disappear just as quickly. One huge tidal wave, no more weight, not kindred, walking from whiplash, changing faces. Maybe you'll find what haunts you. This is all too familiar, too prepared. Soon I'll stroll street side, next to mountains, next to people, next to snow. Hear everything. I will outrun you, waking toward the good one. Clearly rain, buildings brought me here. I see each in angle light, sitting on bed corner, forest, corners in Soho, Ludlow Street, skies, lines of all shape. Is one only lawful, vacant of breath, everything but the phrases, I don't like the word. Snow, spring, fall, and steam liquid, warm and in which way, ask kindly for diversion, absence toughen, flutter me, listen, not that long ago, moves and subtle on a train, few remain in focus, a tall mug, a rocking chair, trees blurred to concrete, you my few dear ones, the night with lasting quality, penetrate eyes to paper, it allows us to look at one another. Organ-driven sweet, yellow made to calm, the middle, red tells your mouth, your nose is warm. Too far from ocean, conjure a lighthouse, no confinement with a blinking light. 5 months back, again fell, suddenly, held in, focus on a teaspoon, measured each day up by the hour, color moves through with surprise, try, work with wires, peel, disconnect, my darling, I haven't broken a line. Back branching spins, branching turn, buds coming, a smile, a wave, a false face, day growth, turn to south of, cyclical season turn, letting, again, come back, bus, empty subway car, sparkling cement, mountainous, host, no bills, back to, hold you and save, false footing, me straight downhill, can do this, upswing, lift me out of snow, to street, disappear, what haunts you, familiar, dissimilar, waking, will I? Transform through grace, smile moon, flutter in my collarbone. Still, here arm under 3 pillows, pillowed, in skin in, how to turn in such large space, escape into, again, on brick, cold and warm, weather, the middle, hold, the middle, held, the middle. Evening ocean sense between small hills, a loyal return, sweet friend, alive in table drawn cards and envelopes, exhalation in handwritten name, no true power in voice, no laughter, no speech, much talk is far too tangible, so much, waking humans, only the feeling of warmth in an empty room, can never be created or destroyed, can one only be lawful when taken a breath, the first step taken alone, you're everything but the phrases, I cannot say I like the word. And I'll end with something new. I'm working on a manuscript that right now is titled The Womb is a Palimpsest, and this is called Not Person, Mother. Oh, and I just wanted to say, my daughter's here. This is my daughter, Adeline. And she's very much been an inspiration for the manuscript I'm working on, and she's a pandemic baby. This is the first time she's seen me read in a room of people. I love you. So this is for her, and do the best. Not person, mother. Baby rocks to sleep, a dark room, sing yellow submarine, words to hums. John Lennon was killed 40 years ago today. Do mothers typically forget this much? I walked outside last June, carried you unknowingly. There will always be new mothers born, photos untaken. I've forgotten one can assume line breaks insinuate breath. When water sheds, mother's visibility discarded, feet pressed against yours, almost don't notice our identical temperature. Born on feet, I carry you. One can assume mothers do forget line breaks, not person, was killed 40 years ago in photos. Temperature untaken. New mothers walk outside, I walk outside. To insinuate breath in June. When water hums to John Lennon, in rooms always unknowingly pressed against. Baby, I've almost forgotten. Years discarded. There will be words sung yellow, visible, noticed. Mother sheds to sleep our identical dark, today our last. Visible line breaks in yellow, I've forgotten today unknowingly. Baby hums, a submarine carries, mothers all identical, discarded there. Dark water born outside, do mothers notice sleep? Not person walks this much, always pressed against feet. To rocks, carry you. Typically, one can assume words were forgotten, killed. Last year, untaken from mother's rooms. Breath unshed, almost 40 words ago. Do photos of mothers born break lines? There is yours to hum and kill. I walk and shed rooms. Discarded mothers always last invisible. Outside in June. Our identical water, much darkness, feet submerged. John Lennon's words sing yellow. Unknowingly insinuate forgotten breath. Carry you as me mothers did years ago to sleep. One can assume babies, not person, don't notice. They all forget. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. I took a trip out here from Western Mass, farthest corner, Berkshire County, because Amy invited me to come. And I'm part of the National Beat Poetry Foundation out of Connecticut. The first poem I'm going to read, I wrote this summer, and after reading some poems and scattered poems by Jack Kerouac, and many of the poems in that book do not have titles, and I'm going to read his, it's not too long, and then mine is the antithesis of his. So this is about bones, and this is Kerouac. I clearly saw the skeleton underneath all this show of personality. What is left of a man and all his pride but bones? And all his lost snacks o' night, and the bathtubs of liquor through his gullet, bones. He mopes in the grave, facial features changed by worms. From him is heard no more. Life is sick, dogs cough, bees sail, birds hack, trees saw, woods cry, men die, ticks try, books lie, ants fly, goodbye. That's from 1960. So my poem is Brain, Bone, Body. Bones carry me, activate me, bend me like a machine. I am a mobile wanderer. I celebrate movement. Bones rest into silence, stillness that lasts for short spurts like a misguided brain bone. Still there somewhere, I ask it if it feels anything. I cannot allow the bone to behave badly, not my brain bone. A precious organ, no bigotry or behemoth battles will challenge a brain bone. Ask the brain bone if it's okay. It will tell you. It is honest beyond any white lie it ever heard. Even the moon will tell you it studies brain bone. The sea says all that salt will cure a bone, same as healing a wound. I heard the moon croon over the brain bone. It was sad like imagined gloom. Then the moon talked about marrow, blood cells, white, red, all flowing and life-giving, a home for the brain bone. When it's at rest, it still flows. It needs the bone. Its rigidity needs the brain, all the marrow. Yep, ask the brain bone if it's okay. Ask the moon too. It will tell you it trusts brain, bone, body. Miracle of movement, brain, bone, body can run like a freight train. Why do I care? It's a restoration plan. A brain, bone, body's finesse, simply put, was Jack's request. Getting into the death motif, pinhole, lethargic pulse for shadows, each sanguine drip reveals morbid vein, stagger, tremble, intrusive thoughts, unflatter, gray matter, perched upon thorn, crow's paw, or shadow the undoing. Pinhole leaf, the king slouches, slumps forward, no coward, he's gone dead. This is actually a grieving poem. Tick-tock, twisted twilight, tainted with thorns, pierces my skin, blood pools, then drips. I wondered where you've been, mysterious man, all whispers and words. I hear your indecipherable moan rise above a gravestone, bend ear to earth, lush turf, night crawlers squirm, haven for crows, dandelions, and worms. Father time, tick-tock, whiskers, blood, thorns, petals disclose, shadowy rose, left to repose, single tear flows. So this poem is really kind of a woman's, liberation poem, and it was published in the Goddess Anthology that the Beat Poetry Foundation puts out. William Wordsworth said, "The world is too much with us. Am I too much for this world?" Where integrity is written off as a misnomer, empathy a weakness, judicious thought a dream, I hide from the window's light as it passes through clear glass panes, allows my fleeting fantasies to reflect, refract, refrain. Pure and unadulterated respect, will it be tolerated? Is there compromise in the name of kindness? These shoes we walk in, do they share a stranger's feet? A mile is not enough, a lifetime too long. Sensibility, is it treasured? Liability, is it cautionary? As we hang in the balance, shouldn't trust plus authenticity equal comfort? Blood flows like a rushing river through my veins during melt season. Am I here for a mission? Yes, if you listen closely, you can hear a subtle drip like melting ice, like seeping red wine, like an enigmatic lilting voice. If the world and I are way too much, may this be my calling card, scepter, olive branch, and ancient, exotic, gilded trinket excavated deep from a humble Egyptian goddess's tomb. Credo, stillness, dark and obtuse. This is how it is before the eclipse. Seldom can one remember a transcendence so serene. When I watch the school of fish gather in the shallows, spawning their offspring, currents camouflage the brood. Thought rules universe, emerges its theory, religion, philosophy, science, makes no matter to the minions. Their credo will bear witness to whatever transcendence transpires, whether white, black, red, gray, translucent. What is now becomes undone. Placebo. Inside all this want of cure, remain silent, feel ill-disposed, admit risk, then flourish. The fact of the matter is, what you swallow ends up as the end result. Warranted or not,
The placebo inside you yearns to be authenticated like a void filled. Escapism. Mosaic dream haunts me still until the dawn I lie awake. Revelations come, glimmers of that horrific era will not elude this comatose trance. Oh, protector daylight, grant that this mosaic dream be washed and tumbled through crashing sea foam, churning its almighty force against the jagged cliffs of time. Release the sorrow, purify my soul. Mosaic dream returns now at dusk. The pillows fought incessantly. Mind's motion displaying fragments. My life askew. The ivory towel, tower, rose-colored glass. Our smoke and mirrors after all. Time, jigsaw, refuse. Oh, rest, relief, I crave, may tomorrow's torment lessen. No gray, no haunting shadows. Release the karmic light, indigo prisms spinning. I swallow elixir of awareness. Perpetual mosaic dream predeceases me. Pilgrimage. Insular it is. Beings deeply entrenched find this habitat alternative, strained, estranged. It is like that on an island, a desert, a mountaintop. Colonies exist unto themselves until upheaval denigrates. And apocalypse rends them homeless, blasts them skyward, lands them defenseless. A hapless embodiment of wayward pilgrims float into frigid currents. Flotsam flourishes, sea dwellers multiply. Metamorphosis ensues, gives birth to an atrocity. Dark, deranged, derelict, it mutters incantations. Ocean's tide, lackluster, sings of treachery. Souls repent, slither beyond where whirlpools suck. The lucky ones inhabit a lost city, others presumed missing, spun into a time warp. Is this the new beginning? So this one's a little more fun. I wrote this many years before anybody thought I was a beat poet. And it was to celebrate the beat poets, and it's called Ode to the Beat Poets. It's not the transient soul, it's the transient soul. It's not the tire that screeches then implodes. It's not the stench of flesh baking in the sun, but the candy, sticky crunch. It's not a carafe of wine that leaves a grape stain, or that the Madonna's tongue is lily white. It's not how purity sings, but how grace flows, takes a hold, and embraces. It's not anybody you know that leans over a 40th store balcony in Midtown Manhattan, or how a red line stains the pavement. It's not what you like or want or anything you can control. It's what hangs down from park trees and flagpoles, and what flaps from a car's antenna that sparks a light incandescent, blind, brighter than the brightest sun. It's everything, far and near, here or there, that whispers the law of the land, that fences you in or fences you out, that taps you on the shoulder and pushes you into the confines of four walls with murals ugly yet exotic, with fading street tugging at your soul. It's accelerating to 100 miles per hour on a straight stretch of highway after exiting the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, traveling with a convertible top down and a black 1958 T-Bird racing onward through sand, cacti, tumbleweed, Las Vegas, then into Northern California, where San Francisco's Bay's fog stares you down, wipes the mud from the soles of your dirty feet, then shines. And this will be my last poem. It was published in an anthology that the National presentation put out on his 100th anniversary in 2022. And so it's dedicated to Jack Kerouac with a little bit of Lewis Carroll in there also. And just so you know, this is If Brambles Were Bookends, what I've been reading from, and it is for sale on the back table that contains t-shirts. It was after I read his last chapter. I felt a snippet, mind blown. It caught me like a mystic foothold, like my existence was a fractal lifespan. My thoughts became a mosaic mind bend. I looked at the horizon, a splintered rainbow. Like Alice, I wanted to slide down a rabbit hole. Instead, I traversed a centrifugal wormhole. A pendulum tranquilized, a monocle blindsided, due to a pill capsulized, because of a third eye downcast. It was evident no welcome mat can make a mad dash. I thought about the derelict blowhole, a whalebone emaciated, encrypted below a tombstone, lying aside a martyred hourglass, accentuated like a purple sandblast. A peel here detail extricated, worse still a beating heart infatuated, a roving spirit supplicated, the paw of crows intoxicated, a peal of bells reciprocated, the lap of water instigated, a divine God's purpose evaluated, a dowser exclaims, underground wells not renovated, a virgin rock fracture anticipated. This perpetual poem may be abbreviated, or laid down as dust exterminated, or live on as a mantra, then redacted. I prefer a beaconic truce, accentuated. Thank you very much.
Questions from here and then plop down. Just, is that good? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was really wonderful, and how great to be here at the Lowell Celebrates Kerouac Festival. So I want to begin with a question for each of you separately. I'm going to start with Cayleigh. Cayleigh, I want to start with a personal connection. You said you had a professor at Hofstra when you were there who was obsessed with Jack Kerouac and super impressed that you were from Lowell and that you had lore. So you have some things to say about your dad's Boy Scout troop and Jack Kerouac. You have some things to say about visiting Kerouac's grave and nicking items that had been left there by fans. And in an essay you turned in for class, you said, "I owe Kerouac money." So I wonder if you would care to expand on any of that.
Well, to expand, I said that I owe Kerouac money, but that I probably also owe him some cigarettes and some nips. So if you're somebody who has left a gift for him and that's in the cemetery, thank you. I probably took it during a certain period of time. So I went to school at the Shaughnessy, which is right across the street from Edson Cemetery, and I played softball in those fields for any of you who are familiar. And yeah, it's kind of been an ongoing tradition where, you know, some older kids tell the younger kids to go by Jack's grave and we take all your gifts. And I feel like he probably would have been okay with that, but maybe you would have thought I was a dirty communist. I'm not really 100% sure. Could have gone either way. But yeah, so as Maggie mentioned, I've kind of been haunted by Kerouac. When I left Lowell and went to college in New York, the first thing the teacher said when he saw my Canadian last name and I had an interest in writing, just brought up Kerouac, Kerouac, Kerouac. So to shut him up, I told him the stories that I used to get told when I first showed any interest in writing myself about how Jack would show up at my dad's Boy Scout meetings. None of this is on fact check, by the way. But so that's how lore works, right? You know? Used to show up at his Boy Scout meetings, I guess, you know, and would read to them and, you know, be a little inebriated. There's supposedly a picture somewhere floating around of my dad on Jack's lap. And, you know, I would always hear the tales about, you know, him waking up in the world and all people were going to clean up in there. So he's just kind of been everywhere. And now that I'm working on nonfiction prose and about traveling the United States, the comparison just can't be escaped.
Ariella, I wanted to ask about, because I only just recently learned that the Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics was founded by Ginsberg, but also by two female beat poets, Diana Parma and Anne Waldman. And so I'm just wondering a little bit about your experience there and how Kerouac's legacy lives on there, but also how, I mean, De Parma and Waldman are two of the women poets who sort of survived, their work survived the beat movement, but it was a really male-dominated movement, and I'm just curious to know more about your experience at the school.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Maggie. So I spent a total of about 6 years at the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics at Overlook University, Boulder, Colorado. It's a mouthful. First as an MFA student, and then as a staff member at Kerouac School, doing much what Amy's been doing for this panel, for this event, doing event planning for busy poets. But no, I mean, you really said what I was hoping to work in, which is that at least for a lot of folks, or folks sort of new to like the beat poets, and if people know about Europa, they often know, they know, okay, Ginsberg founded the school in 1974, but, Anne Waldman, who, bless her heart, is still very much with us, and if anyone has met her, she's just like the most full of energy, like just incredible person. And she's still there every year at Europa in the summer writing program. She also teaches during the year, and she is such a presence there still. And most students that go through the program, because it's quite small, get a chance to study with her and work with her, which is amazing. But it really wasn't until going there, even though I knew about Anne, and I was in college in New York City at the New School and would see her read frequently, and it was from seeing her on a panel actually where she was like plugging the Kerouac School, which like I'm doing right now, that I wrote it down in a notebook. I was still an undergrad, and I'm like, that place sounds crazy and awesome. So several years later looked it up, and then kind of the rest is history. But it wasn't really till I got to Boulder, and I actually studied with her, I think in my first semester there, that I really learned there's so much more to kind of the history of the beats than just like Ginsberg and Kerouac and Burroughs and all the male characters, that were a part of this scene. And so Anne, at any point when she talks about the Kerouac School, of course mentions that she founded it with Ginsberg, but she always brings in Diana de Prima and Bobby Louise Hawkins, who was also like an early part of the school and was there for many, many years until she passed. So there's a lot of the women, yes, there's like kind of fewer from that time, and certainly fewer that are still with us, but the ones that are just power, and like all the energy. She, like Anne, something that I love Anne, and one of the things I remember saying when I was a student, there was like, I don't know, some students were complaining about something with the school that they weren't happy with, and why isn't it not this way? And she's like, just go start your own school. That's what I did. and she wasn't being like flippant. She was like being sincere, like great ideas. You really should start your own school. And that's just the kind of personality that she has.
and her energy is like just emanates through that campus, and the academics there is very much around like, you know, the outrider lineage, the beat lineage, and performance, and you know, bringing the power to your performance. So I could say so much. I'm sorry.
So, Linda, you are a Beat Poet Laureate of Massachusetts. I think, and probably the audience is curious about what that means in 2024 and how the legacy of the Beats is kept alive by your work and others' work, and the foundation that you're part of.
Okay, yes. So to be a Beat poet in 2024, well, I started being officially one in 2023, so it's been a year. But I was writing poetry that I knew was a little, for lack of a nicer way of putting it, off the rails. And I'm like, there's a home for this. So I started visiting the Beat Poetry Festival in Connecticut in 2018, might have been the first year I went. And I had been going as an audience member, and I've gone ever since. So what I was, you know, observing there was, I don't know if any of you have heard any of these names, but they're pretty well known: George Wallace, Ron Whitehead, Chris Benoit, and I'm like, wow, yeah, I might be writing in the Beat style, but I'm surely not reading it correctly. So, and then well, let me give you a little background in case you're curious about the organization. They will recognize a poet in any of the 50 states and in foreign countries, but they don't necessarily have a Beat poet named for all the countries in the world or for all 50 states at any given time. And state poet laureates serve for 2 years, national poet laureates serve for a year, and then people like Ron Whitehead, Chris Benoit, George Wallace, and many others. There's women, Krista Velasquez, she's Greek, Ben Bojorlund, he's Swedish, I don't know, I'm probably writing their names, but we have probably 8 to 12 lifetime Beat Poet Laureates. And Paul Richmond from Greenfield, Massachusetts started as a state poet laureate, but he's been so active in Western Mass and keeps Western Mass poetry alive that he was very deserving. A man named Tommy Twilight from Northampton, he's now a lifetime Beat poet. So some people go straight to a national Beat poet, some do the state thing, and that's what they do for the 2 years. But you really, to get into the national arena, I mean, these people travel all over the United States. Some of them travel all over the world, like Ron Whitehead right now is in Newfoundland. George Wallace flies all over to European countries, Asian countries. But I was so enamored with this. I'm like, this is trippy, I like it. So for me, on a personal level, I want to spread the love of Beat poetry to more rural areas like where I live. I want to, you know, have people feel like they have the freedom to write, you know, in free verse, freedom to write without necessarily having it have to be like confined to a very conventional way of writing, and that, you know, once you can learn how to express yourself orally, you really start loving it even more because, you know, in order to perform, it's got to come off pretty good. I mean, it can be great on the page, but if you're going to be a reader in public and not just sell books and no one ever hears you read, it's, you know, you have to really be in love with the Beat poetry movement to really expound on it and continue. So I'm doing the best I can. I've only had this title for 1 year, and I've traveled all over many places in Massachusetts, northern Connecticut, and I hope to get to other states too. I'll be in Gloucester in November, and for the first time on November 2nd in Northampton, I'm going to be reading in front of a jazz band. I've never done that. So that would be exciting. so, did I have
So Amy wants me to ask you about your experiences with Kerouac, how you encountered Kerouac first, if he has had any influence over your work, or if you discovered affinities with his work later on, even without knowing it.
So I was first introduced to Kerouac pretty early, probably too early. I think I ran on the road when I was about 11, and I didn't really get into it. It definitely was the wrong time to be reading that book. So I think though something that I did really get from it though was I read that and I said, I could do that. I mean, a lot of that's the arrogance of, a preteen, but the fact that he was using real language, talking the way that people talk and communicating some, serious social commentary, that wasn't completely lost on me at that point. I think that it's really kind of planted something in my brain, and a lot of my writing that I do now is, I try really hard to not use academic language. I write a lot about the city of Lowell and my community, and a lot of my community and my friends don't want to read poems, not the academic sounding ones and stuff like that. So I try to write stuff that, they would want to read, that I want to read, that I would want to hear, and, I think that's in the beats here anyway.
Before I answer the question, I just want to riff off what you were just saying about reaching, a non-poetry, non-academic audience with your writing. And so I also from Massachusetts. I grew up in the North Shore, right by Salem, and I loved the poetry section of my English classes in high school. And but I remember thinking the poetry is just so dry. This is not. I mean, I have a better appreciation for it now, but I remember even at the time thinking this isn't the kind of poetry you should probably be teaching to 14-year-olds to get them to like poetry. And so years later, when I was at Europa, one of the course requirements was to teach in some part of the community. So I taught a creative writing class at an arts high school in Boulder to high school. They were sophomores, I think, and that was my goal. I'm going to try to bring in poetry that is going to feel exciting and daring and all of these things that I felt I didn't get to experience when I was younger. And so we read a little bit of Howell. I had to be really particular, just I couldn't bring it to this high school, but and then we also read Anne Waldman's really famous classic Fast Eating Woman, and that day I talked about the rant as a poem, as a poetic style. And so the writing assignment that day was to, every student had to write a rant and ask high school kids to rant about something. It was awesome. And I also made them stand up on the table when they read, on their desks. Again, arts high school, it's probably I could get away with it. But it was so fantastic, because just, and obviously Howell and Fast Speaking Woman were a very long time ago, but so exciting still to young people. And it was really cool to say, this is poetry. These are actually really famous poets. It's not John Keats, but it's anyways, famous in their own right. So sorry, I just had to mention that, because I think that's something that's so interesting about Kerouac is coming from Lowell and working class, and his style being so influenced by jazz and by music. And now I feel in this era, the last couple of decades, there's a lot of I don't know, I'm a rock and roll fan. There's a lot of rock musicians who very much identify with him, or so I think there's something to that about being accessible, and I love how you said speaking the way that writing the way people actually talk, right? And the spontaneous aspect to his writing, which I think was incredibly new and like just really fresh and really unheard of. So as far as like coming to his work, it was a lot of like when I got into the Kerouac school, I was like, oh shit, I really should read Jack Kerouac, like a lot more than I already have, And I'm in Lowell every summer since I was a little kid, going to the Lowell Folk Festival, and my parents have taken my brothers and I since we were little, and that the summer before I started my MFA program, my mom said, we gotta go to his grave, so we may have contributed to one of your evenings, but and something else that I'm kind of bopping around here, but that has really been like a really profound lesson from my time at Europa was that I learned really early on. Lineage is huge there. Like lineage is everything, poetic lineage, and how this is just my own personal experience of it is like, okay, this school is founded by beat poets, it's very alternative academically. Much like your family, like you can't choose your lineage. And there were people that I know that I went to school that just like couldn't stand Kerouac's work, like that's not my thing. I just, for whatever reason. And then of course plenty of like hardcore fans and everything in between. And I recommend everybody go home and Google this. The Naropa audio archives online. It's free. You can listen to lectures and readings from 1974 to now. It's incredible. And it's just a really great public resource, but that's my plug. But really, like the more I was there learning about like everyone that came before me and like what the community was and how they formed it and why it was disembodied because they didn't have a physical space. They didn't have like a place that they rented, so they would hold workshops and readings like in wherever they could find space in the city. And so all these things that I realize are like a part of my lineage. And again, I think even the people who maybe don't identify, that went through that program that don't identify with the beat so much, regardless, it's like still a part of it. It's like there's something in the air, and I think it just like permeates regardless.
Well, when I started reading Kerouac, I read him many, many years ago, and first I didn't know what to think of it. I thought it was too random. But then as I became an adult, I'm like, this stream of consciousness thing, and the fact that he's using free association, and it's almost like talking to himself, and then talking to his friends, and then it's back into a narrative. I'm like, this is a great way to write. And as Cayleigh was saying, I appreciated her saying that when, this is the kind of way your friends will listen to this because it's not going to bore them, it's not academic poetry, it's not, being written within these confines of, particular rules. But yet, if you really take his poetry apart, he does have a lot of poetic devices. But, I love it when he makes up words, that's about the best. And I like his hyphens, which, I don't know, they call them M hyphens, but maybe we can call them JK hyphens. I often wonder, which I have not heard, whether he read Emily Dickinson and appreciated her hyphens, so borrow them from her. But I don't, has anyone heard that? I haven't, but it seems that, maybe he did. But my thing is I like to be able to write with kind of a freedom. And oftentimes the things I start with are really messy and really not coherent enough. So over time, I get new thought processes. I may have old poems that I borrow stanzas from. And eventually, this very, skeletal, like Frankenstein poem develops into something with some kind of meaning. And that is really a way to create good original poetry. So I, attribute that to Jack Kerouac and really the whole beat movement.
Amen.
So we're close to out of time, but I think maybe there's time for one or two questions from the audience. Okay. There's a microphone here if anyone has anything to ask our wonderful panel of poets. Don't be shy. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned lineage was important in the poetry school, knowing that Rinpoche founded the school and its lineage is very important in Tibetan Buddhism. I'm curious, was there a connection there, and at what level did that Tibetan Buddhism sort of inform what you were going to work with this body?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, I think that Naropa is a Buddhist school, Tibetan Buddhism, and you can certainly engage with that as much as you want to. And there's a lot of, they have like a master's in yoga studies. But I will say that I always felt like the Kerouac school is a bit on the outside of kind of the rest of Naropa, unsurprisingly. Writers just like hanging out on the picnic tables in the back. But it very much, sort of like I was saying about the lineage, it really does the Buddhist aspects emanated through like every part of my experience there. Some in some ways that were maybe more obvious and some less so. But like a maybe more direct example was that for every class, usually the classes were 3 hours long and met once a week. So we come in and we would do a kind of a grounding moment. Like it wouldn't really take very long, but everybody would bow in, and then class would start, and that was like a sort of symbolically like leaving everything else at the door. You're here, you're doing workshop, and like really being present, and then at the end of class you bow out. But even just the way we would approach workshop, and in the more academic end, because it is a accredited school now, is like there was a contemplative requirement. So you had to take, even if you were studying psychology or poetry or anything, you had to take like I took a class in Japanese, Ikebana, Japanese flower arranging, yoga, and, meditation, there's Aikido and things like that. But it just, in the general like philosophy of the school, that was founded upon, that's like the faculty very much take really seriously, I think, is regardless of what you're there to study, it's so present.
Maybe one more? Maybe one more question? Are we ready to wrap? Do you have a question, Maggie?
What poets are you guys reading right now?
The question is, what poets are they reading? Yeah, maybe other influences.
Well, I wish I had a prepared answer for that. Right now, I'm actually reading a bunch of books for Maggie's class. None of them being poetry books, because I'm working on some essays right now. So I'm actually rereading James Baldwin, Notes on a Native Son. And I've actually been reading a lot of Toni Morrison right now. I really like the way that she writes about childhood and looking back. Hopefully my stuff won't be as depressing. But I haven't been reading as much poetry as I would like to. Maybe after tonight.
Yeah, I know that we were supposed to kind of prepare an answer to this question, and what I realized was I haven't actually been reading a lot of poetry, sort of intentionally, because I mostly read at night, and I find if I'm reading poetry before sleep, it just makes me more awake. And I have a young kid, so that's just the time I have. But I've been reading novels, which I feel like I actually have not read fiction in a really long time. So it's been really, really great. I can't remember the name of, the author of this. It's a creative nonfiction. It's called The Witching Tide, and it's about like the witch hunts in the United Kingdom in like the 1600s. It's incredibly written, but I've also been reading a lot of novels based on motherhood and just, how do I say this, like gently, I don't know, how it makes you really insane. I don't know if anyone's read the novel Night Witch. There's going to be a movie coming out about it soon. It's amazing. So yeah, that's been something that's really been grabbing for me.
I've been reading Taylor Mali, even though his own kind of on the fringe poet. I've been reading poetry of my own contemporaries. I don't know if you've ever heard of this woman. She teaches in Boulder, Colorado. Her name is Kika Dorsey. She wrote a blurb in my book, and she has fascinating poetry. I mean, the way she can use description, metaphors, and imagery is like amazing to me. She's also, I can't remember the title of it, but she has one on burner getting ready to publish. There's a man who lives in New Hampshire. His name is John Wessick. He writes really far out, wild, exaggerated poetry and short stories. Some of it's kind of slapstick, some of it is, but what he does do the best is satire. I do like to read like Ted Kooser, and I mean, I don't necessarily read all beat poetry. I read George Wallace's poems that he posts online every day. I have to say he's a mentor to me. What that man can come out with, it's almost like, did he spend a lot of time writing this, or does this stuff just like fire out at him? Like, you know, it amazes me. And I've been in his company and talked to him several times. I was invited to read with him and Tom Clark in January, which I'm very thrilled about. So those are a few. I mean, I pick up anthologies quite often, so there you go. There's all kinds of varieties of poets and anthologies. I kind of like to, you know, get out of the groove of one poet and move on to the next one with an anthology. You can have a lot of fun with that. A friend of mine passed down a beat poet anthology to me that has about 6 or 8 poems of all the famous beat poets. So I guess that's about what I've been reading.
Maggie, can I ask you what you've been reading?
Oh, sure. Let's see. Well, we had a wonderful poet come visit UMass Lowell last spring, Sean Young Fong, who teaches at UMass Boston, and I was really enamored with his work, in part because it's really, really different from mine. And he's young. Let's see, I've just been reading the book Undal, or poems from Tanya Gray's book, and it's coming from Yes Books in the mail, but I really, I was looking forward to meeting her, and I really love those poems. I also read a lot of fiction. I'm reading Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. I'm reading a book called Mating by Norman Rush. That one's really long. It won the Pulitzer like in the 90s, and and it's dense. So I'll read it for a while, and then I go in for something like a little bit lighter. But I too read widely around genres. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're out of time, but please give a round of applause for our wonderful poet.
Thanks everybody. There's still 3 more days of Lowell Celebrates Kerouac. We have programs if you'd like to check them out. And I hope you all have heard about the Lowell Festival, which is happening next weekend. And next week there's going to be an event right here in the Overlook. So I hope you come out and check it out. Thank you.